You're listening to the Business Mindset by RSC Podcast. Episode 4 is about the myth that adding more people makes business easier.
Hello and welcome to our 4th episode at Business Mindset by RSC. RSC Business Group is a group of global business coaches and consultants that operate independently but share in the same vision, mission, and methodology. Combined, we have more than 100 years of shared experience and collective best practices. We don't just consult and coach businesses, we are building businesses ourselves. Having the fundamentals of being able to replace and scale a business is key in being able to control your income, freedom, succession, and sale of any business that you build. My colleagues and I also specialize in key areas of business. So today we have Robert Chun, the founder of RSC and the owner of RSC Business Group. We have Brandon Ling, the founder of Business Group Alpha, and myself, the founder of RSC Business Group Sales. We are doing an 8-part series on business myths. And today's business myth is that by hiring more employees, by adding more people, is going to be so much easier on the owner. That's a common myth that we see. Adding people can make things easier, but simply adding people does not. So why do you think people get the idea that by adding more people, it's going to be easier now and it's going to handle all that overwhelm and all the extra work? And why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it just adding more employees work?
Well, there's the idea that many hands make light work, which can be true. So more can be produced in a shorter period of time. However, the part that's required is organizing and managing those people and ensuring that they know what to do. So training them. And it's a managing, supervising, and training that often get forgotten. We can't just dump work on people and expect them to do it. And that's sometimes what people do.
Well, if I may add to that, we're used to the show of business. We go into banks, it seems to be running really well. You go to a store, everything is stocked. Or you go to a retail restaurant, you sit down and somebody comes and take your order and serve you. So what they see is the front of the business, not the back. Like fabulous French restaurant. You go in there, you get 7-course meal, you spend lots of money, the wine is delicious, the waiter is impeccable. But if you were to walk through the double doors, you will see people running like frantically like crazy. Like, this is getting burned, fix this, okay, the next order is ready. So what most people don't see as a customer is the actual operation of business. While it is great being a customer, it is horrible being a head chef or a head waiter or head whatever, anything, because you're managing chaos to produce a parency of perfect results. So everybody thinks like, if I have a restaurant like this, waiter like this, and a cashier that's dressed so well, the clean carpets and beautiful forks and knives and 7-course meals, my life is so easy. That is true if you're a customer, but not true if you're an actual manager from the back to back.
So it's like a stage show. So they don't see what goes on behind the scenes, people with the ropes and the pulleys making things happen.
Right.
So they buy into the front or the fantasy, the show.
Right.
Not the reality.
Yeah. So most businesses do a show for their customers. So since most people who start a business are never been in the backstage of the business, they have no idea until they become the stagehand of the business, or they work for a theater and they're in the back lifting 30 pounds of weight, or running to find get the dictionary for the front podium. We forgot all about the prop.
Things or have worked in the back end and they could have managed, but they may have taken for granted all the processes, procedures, and systems that were already in place that allowed them to manage and supervise, right? All of the hiring and training that already happened before them that allowed for that. all of the kind of conversations that happened on how we're going to do something, how we're going to systemize it, how we're going to standardize it, how we're going to capture it, how we're going to track it, all of those kind of nitty gritty conversations that people had. And they probably took it for granted because it was already there.
Of course we vote this way. Of course we go to school this way. Of course. But all these were all created by somebody initially. It was all practice until it became natural. So people forget that.
And then we were kind of born into it. Or we came into an organization and there were already people that were set up. Okay. And then those people all simultaneously supported one person in learning how to interact with each one. But say you hired 3 people at the same time, they cannot teach each other because they're all learning. So it's how quickly
Right.
and what your expectations are. And I think that this myth especially can be really detrimental because in the concession, like, in the how business owners build businesses, where it occurs. So you've just done the marketing, you've just done the sale, you've just like say sweat equity, right? Like, and you go, I want a little bit of this for myself. I just want to hire some people. I want to make this easier on myself. Hire people, you have zero energy, like none anymore, right? Because you've almost like ran a marathon and it's almost like one marathon and then you're going flying somewhere for another marathon. And you're expecting that this is going to be easier. And I can really see a lot of owners being like, I don't want to do this anymore because the building of my company was challenging enough. And now I thought that all I needed to do was get to a place where I can hire people and it's going to get easier. And then they realize it's taking double of the time. A lot of them, what I've heard people say is, and I've heard you, Robert, share with some of the owners, they're like, there's so much communication. So it's actually, okay, maybe they're doing tasks for you, but now you're a pincushion for communication, which is also jarring and unexpected.
Right. And then you feel like you're not doing any work because you're not moving your body anymore, you're moving somebody else's body. And then eventually your words move 50 people, 100 people, but to get there, you have to train all those 50 people, 100 people, which is frustrating and tiring and everything else.
And there's another jarring thing that happens here. And I know, Brandon, you've mentioned this. Owners start to understand how unspecific they are and how many different perspectives there are. Like, even me saying it, and there's an owner that could be listening that hasn't hired people, and they could be like, of course I understand that there are a ton of perspectives, but you do not truly grasp, okay, how differently human beings think until you're trying to like create to do a task in your head or that you've been doing it and to hand it off and to communicate it properly.
Or they would take the order and run with it like, I hate working with small businesses. God, I wish they were all gone. Are you sure, Robert? Is that what you want? Of course I do. They're so frustrating. 6 months later, all of your small businesses are gone. Your income is dropped by 35%, 40%. What happened? Well, we just never needed a contract because you didn't want them. But we need a cash flow. What do you mean? Oh, okay.
Communication, right, has to be really precise. And in that stage there, when you're getting people, when you're creating your company in that stage, if you're not precise with what you want, what your communication is. And so like in with our friend group, we could say, oh God, my husband, my boyfriend, he's so terrible. I just don't want to be married anymore, right? There's not necessarily such a huge repercussion. Like that show, oh my God, I'm having such a bad day, right? It doesn't necessarily, we can kind of say these kind of things and really get away with it. But in ownership, we cannot. It's actually our words really start to need to become precise. And I have to catch myself too quite a bit. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just wish I didn't have so much work, right? I have to definitely change how I say in my mind and how I say out loud what I actually want, because what's going to happen is like what you said, Robert, everything's going to get chopped down.
And someone's going to hear you. And they'll carry it out.
Right, exactly. Aurelia, you were giving a difference between, or examples of a difference between someone venting or communicating their feelings versus in a business, they become instructions and commands. Or someone interprets them that way and thinks, okay, but I better do that then.
Yes, exactly.
And they execute.
Exactly, absolutely. What are some solutions? What are some things that you found have worked or that you've implemented for business owners that are practical that you can share here that will support them in this stage?
Document with signature and dates.
What was the second thing? Document with.
Consequences, costs, signature, and dates.
Okay.
So that the owner knows what they're signing up for. So a lot of times, like, can I buy the computer? Sure. Computer costs $6,000 plus software plus. Oh my God! You just spent $10,000. Use a computer. If you said I need a computer that does this, and the maximum cost of budget is $3,000, and it is for these people, they spelled out and made requests on paper, that would be a problem. But you just said, get a car, any car. Wow, beautiful Rolls Royce. What happened? Well, any car, it was there.
Okay, so document.
Oh my God, the budget. Yeah, budget's blown because they have, nobody knows the concept money except the owner, right? Most of the time. So it's like, it's not my money.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a party. $24,000 later. Wasn't it a great party? Yes, it was, but it was for like 40 people. The most $24,000. What? Right? But you didn't say. So therefore, and the smart Alex gets away with a lot of things in large organization because they use the loopholes of language. So you gotta be careful as an owner.
So put it in writing, not just with your contractors, not with just your clients, with your employees.
Well, because if you actually take on a large project, I mean, there are things that you can just say. It doesn't cost a lot of money. But a lot of times as you become an owner, everything costs money. So the question is, unless you set up a limit, they will spend whatever. Unless you set up a time, they'll spend forever. Unless you want to build a structure where people can spend as much time as you want, it doesn't hurt you. But most of the time or taking too long hurts you.
Well said. Yeah, those are really.
Yeah, so there need to be criteria and requirements, boundaries that are given with those instructions,
Right.
like purchase a computer or a car,
Mm-hmm.
to guide whoever's taking the action.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that owners should take into account, new hires will need some level of training, even if it's just onboarding and getting used to the procedures at this business. Even if they've done that type of job before, the way it was done at their previous employer might be different. So they do need some time to adjust. There does need to be some time for onboarding and training. Oftentimes, especially when someone's going from one person shop to hiring people, sometimes they wait till they're overwhelmed before hiring somebody. So they haven't accounted that there's going to be time and effort required to train that person. They think that, okay, I can just hire somebody, they can hit the ground running. But that's not so, because the way they do things will be different than the way someone else does things, most likely. And then it becomes, well, I hired this person, but I don't have time to train them. I'm already overwhelmed. Now you're going to have me do even more work. So ideally, owners, managers, and executives take that into account, and they get ready to hire people before they're completely overwhelmed. That way they still have some capacity to train this new person.
Other thing is that people are now working 8 hours straight. So you have to account for about 2 hours of no work in your pay. People get pissed off because they're paying good amount per hour, 20, 30, 40, $50 an hour, but they're not working. Well, because human beings cannot work straight 8 hours. So you got to account for in their pay, accounting for their actual work hours and like that. So a lot of times people get paid minimum wage because a lot of times they just wait, and you're accounting for time that they don't work. But people don't know that. So they think like, I'm paying them this, they should work. No, you already accounted for their slack time. So that's what people forget to do.
Is there such a thing as a perfect employee? Should you be selective in hiring the best employee, or is there an alternative?
There is no perfect employee, and perfect employee is two people, not one, worker and supervisor. See, everybody thinks perfect employee is a person. It's not. It's two people plus a system with position. That's a perfect employee because one does the work, one checks the work. And one's job is checking the work, not doing the work. Then you have a perfect employee.
Well said. Great points. And then for yourselves, have you tried to hire employees?
I used to many years ago, but I stopped. Instead, I outsourced most of everything because number one, it's much easier. Number two, you only use what you need, nothing else. You pay a little more because it accounts for their payrolls and override by somebody else. But what that does allows you to have complete flexibility so you could become an organization overnight or become just yourself overnight. I found that to be more economical over long periods of time because human resources is a job in itself.
Yes.
And then I create people who can be somewhat independent.
Yeah, so you created your own system of affiliates, and you have an organizational structure, but people are independent, and you're doing what you enjoy more. If what I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is like if you do enjoy managing and supervising, possibly you may want to hire people that may work, or if you have the funds. If you want to go that direction, you definitely can, but it's not the only option for for creating your business.
Yeah, because employees, you pay them hourly for the work they do. You're buying a widget. Staff people takes long time, years to create. So those are people who support the structural organization. So I do have staff, but don't have any employees, and I do have executives, but they're all separate people.
Okay. Brandon, where are you on hiring for yourself? Or
I haven't hired any employees. What I have done is spent a certain amount of time, or actually quite a bit of time, training interns, mostly to prepare them for their future jobs, so certain types of skills. And then out of some of those, I've hired as contractors for various projects and so on, or referred them to some of my clients. But that's about it.
Can you talk a little bit more about interns?
What we'd like to know.
Well, I'm thinking for our audience, right? Again, this could be another myth, right? Intern is kind of the idea, oh, it's free, right? Oh, like we're getting a lot of myths, I think, from people. They're like, oh, more employees means easier work. Oh, intern, free employee, right? Like there's that common theme where this kind of free thing is going to be so good. So can you bust that myth up a little bit?
Sure. A lot of times interns, okay, so they, at least the ones that I worked with, they're university students. In some cases, they're in the latter years of high school. Those were harder to work with in terms of maturity and level of responsibility. And then some of them had just recently graduated university. Now, for the ones who had graduated, that was during a period of time where unemployment for young people was really high. So rather than doing nothing when they can't find a job, they're looking to do something, right? Something they can put on the resume, something that helps move them forward in some capacity. Like you said, some people look at it as we get free labor, really cheap labor. But these are people who have little to no work experience. They just come out of university, or they're in the middle of university or college. And there's quite a bit of difference between university and college compared to real world work. So it's a lot, basically the internship is like an adjustment period for them where they get to start to learn certain things. So a lot of the times, what a lot of these interns got out of the internship, other than certain experience and skills and learning certain processes and getting exposed to certain things in the business world, such as speaking to people, I had to train a lot of them because a lot of them grew up with cell phones as well, how to answer a phone, how to leave a voicemail, because they're not used to doing that. That if you meet business contacts, the first thing to go to is not try to add them on Facebook as a friend to maintain contact with them. Uh, Showing up on time, using calendar, scheduling, how to communicate to other people and relay information to others so that other people understand what they're talking about, right? Rather than everything, all the information being stored in their head. For example, what I had with some interns who were in the HR programs or graduated from HR programs. So what I had them do was start to practice, learn how to recruit other interns, interview them, and make selections about which interns to bring on board. And then for those who acquired those skills after, practicing, training, practicing, and so on, and doing more and more on their own, then it became, okay, you selected an intern to hire, you get to manage them. So now they got to learn management. And then they got to see the consequences of being too nice in the hiring process, or start to see what happens when they hire people. How do they turn out? And then, okay, if you don't want this person anymore, then we need to fire this person. And then they can start to get to face, okay, well, you hired the person, so you get to fire them. Or choose to keep them and then suffer through working with them. They get the choice. They get the consequence of their choice for hiring in the first place. I'd only step in if it were really bad.
Yeah.
But that's the way they get to learn experiences. Also, partially because, you have different types of internships to follow the law, depending on what jurisdiction you're in. At least where I am, then it became, you can have paid internships. You can have internships that are either paid or unpaid if they get school credit. And then if it was just unpaid internship with no school credit, you had to meet certain criteria. And it becomes really focused on training the intern so that they get more out of it. The laws are designed to avoid people trying to use internships as free labor, replacing paid employees with an unpaid intern, right? Which wouldn't be fair. So the type of internship that I ran was primarily designed that provided the interns value and training them. And it was a considerable amount of time because we'd have training sessions every week. Then there was meetings for delegating tasks, managing tasks, supervising them. I have to check in with them multiple times a day, 5 days a week. Because and they all have their different personalities, different behaviors. Like when we talk about people who are different types of workers, some of them have to check in with more different personalities. Some need more support or encouragement. Others are different. And then there were interns from different countries. So then dealing with different cultures and how they tend to behave does provide also quite a bit of learning for me in terms of how to manage different types of people, or how to work with different types of people, which overall benefits me because as I encounter different types of people as potential clients or contractors or suppliers or vendors, it works out.
That was really well shared. You nailed it on the head in many ways. For our listeners, none of what we said is to dissuade you from having employees, from having interns, from scaling, from growing. This is an episode about myths. So we want you to, be clear about what you're getting yourself into and the time that it's going to require. So it's not necessarily going to be something that is going to free up your time right away. I think it's a worthwhile investment. You should definitely take a look at how you are and what you enjoy doing. For myself, I personally need a lot of accountability. So my employees are actually motivators for me to be accountable to myself, to get things done. It's just how I am. So knowing yourself and how you are and what your preferences are will help you take the next step in your business. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to hear and support you in any way that we can. And that concludes our 4th episode of Business Mindset, brought to you by RSC. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
The Business Mindset by RSC podcast is brought to you by Robert Chun at rscbusinessgroup.com, Aurelia Usita at rscsales.ca, and Brandon Ling at rscbga.com. Music is provided by Davey Harris at daveyharris.com.